Empowerment Series, The Reluctant Welfare Series, Chapter 7 by Bethany Hendren. We'll first be starting at post-war in the beginning of the 1960s. There is post-war prosperity. Post-war prosperity was happening and the U.S. was in the position to become the major economic power. Wages were being raised, there was growth in Social Security and other social programs were becoming better. The expansion of nation's roads, there was a housing boom and there was a lot of vehicles being produced. Americans got deducted interest payments on mortgages and loans so people could easier get houses. A lot of social problems still existed. Many serious social problems were mainly for African Americans, Latinos, and First Americans. There was horrible poverty and violation of fundamental rights. Some of these prevented people from voting, using public facilities, and transportation. Right here is a picture of a family in the Appalachian Mountains that suffered greatly from poverty. The social problems included no nutrition programs, so many people suffered from malnutrition. There was a lot of elderly people who could not pay for their medical bills. Women were kicked out of the labor force after World War II. There was many hazardous working conditions. There was no resources for people with mental disabilities or illnesses, and homosexuals were also seen to have a mental problem and could be involuntarily committed. Kennedy gets elected and he decides to act on these social reforms. The civil rights movement is what pushed Kennedy, and he ended up making his own legislative in 1963. The legislative prohibited job discrimination based on race or gender, also prohibited discrimination in voter registration. In this picture, Kennedy is giving his speech when he made the civil rights legislative. And the quote says, "If an American, because his skin is dark, cannot eat lunch in a restaurant open to the public, ... And he was referring to how black people could not use the same facilities as white people. Also, Kennedy continues to try to keep making social reform policies. He is met with a lot of failure because his policies wouldn't get passed through Congress or the Senate, or they would be terminated shortly after, for many reasons. He broke the conservative compliancy, and he established a policy agenda which included civil rights, war on poverty, food stamps, Medicare, federal aid to schools, and the tax reform. Kennedy is assassinated, and Lyndon Johnson becomes the president and is left with the policy agenda that Kennedy created. Johnson's success. He makes the Economic Opportunities Act, the Food Stamps Act, Civil Rights Act, Elementary and Second Education Act, and Older Americans Act.